friends. Welcome to episode 201 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
Oh, I'm very full from dinner, and it was wonderful.
Very full, fat corned beef sandwiches. Can't argue. Oh my god.
That corned beef turned out good.
Yeah, it did. It really did.
I made corned beef. I don't usually cook all that much lately. I used to cook a lot more in the past, but been just too damn busy.
Mm-hmm.
But I could not avoid that corned beef when I was at Costco. It just looked too damn good.
No, you gotta pick that up. Yeah.
And surprising, in a pressure cooker. Pressure cookers surprise me all the time. They really do.
They defy the laws of physics, honestly.
Well, I mean, they use the laws of physics, abuse them, and toss them to the side like you don't know me. Any
sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. I'm going with that. That's my answer, and I'm sticking with it.
That is fair. That is fair. Yeah, so I'm going to just say that we have a system spotlight tonight that surprised me, that we were both waiting to do.
Yeah.
It's been on our list, but I'm going to say I am glad, like I said, we were talking about this earlier, I'm glad we are doing this now, after we've done a ton of other system spotlights, after we've been through all of our games, after we've praised all kinds of other systems, because it definitely it has given me a different perspective on this.
Yeah, it's starting to kind of become like a Godwin's Law for us. We would go online and we would search for, various... opinions and whatnot on various topics that we cover and whatnot, and it seemed like, especially in r/RPG on Reddit, any discussion would eventually, within 15 posts, someone would mention Blades in the Dark,
or one of the derivatives,
of it.
Yeah, the core system definitely.
Hey guys, I'm looking for a system. What should I run this at? Blades in the Dark.
Yeah.
But I'm not running a heist-based criminal steampunk game. Doesn't matter.
Blades in the Dark.
Blades in the Dark.
Go get the book. Look at it. Look at it.
You bloody well should be.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, taking it to this point, I will say it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
I will open because typically we get a pretty standard question, and it didn't come up on our list this time, but it's definitely a standard question of, is the game good for starting storytellers? And part of me says yes, and a big part of me says no. And I'll explain as we go through this, but my initial take on it is because I've done other games. You look at it and it is daunting, the amount of change.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. If you are a D&D person and you're going to go play Blades in the Dark, be prepared. Be prepared for your mind to be warped in a new direction.
Yeah,
in a good way.
I kind of feel the same way about Blades in the Dark that I do about FromSoft's absolute masterpiece, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice.
Fair enough.
Hear me out. Okay.
Of course.
So I was a Dark Souls veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and FromSoft's other games, you learn certain things about how those games are to be played. Okay, so when FromSoft puts out another game, and it shares a lot of the same typical mechanics.
Right.
You've got sculptors' idols instead of bonfires, but you still have these checkpoints that reset all the enemies, that replenish your health.
Right.
Allows you to kind of teleport between them. Things like that. There's a lot of commonalities between the games, and I think that does it a misservice, because in its core gameplay, if you try to play Sekiro like a Dark Souls game, you are gonna have a bad time, because Dark Souls tells you don't need armor if you don't get hit, and that you can just dodge everything, just dodge roll through it, right? Well, they give you a dodge button in Sekiro. But if you use it, you will get punished for it 80% of the time.
Yeah.
You have to deflect. You have to block. You have to parry
You're
things.
in combat.
And yeah, you are to get in their face and mix it up sword fighting style. And so when you first saw that game come out, there was two different types of people. There was those who just picked it up as their first game going, gee, this game is really fun and I really enjoy the mechanics. And a bunch of Dark Souls veterans like myself going, what is this piece of crap? How do you... I'm getting killed left and right. I don't enjoy this. This is stupid. I can't dodge anything.
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy.
Wrong.
Yeah.
And I think to kind of wrap it back around to Blades in the Dark, to drive my point home, it's very much like that. I think if you start off with Blades in the Dark, you're going to have set in your mind, you're going to walk into it without preconceived notions about how role-playing games should be, what rules should govern how a role-playing game runs. And you're going to take it at face value. But I think if you walk into Blades in the Dark as a veteran and expect your bog standard, this is initiative, this is combat, this is hit points, here's your stats, you're just not. It's none of that's there.
No.
And you're not going to be. You're going to have I think those preconceived notions can get in the way of learning Blades in the Dark freshly.
Yeah, it is. It is most definitely not a game of attrition. It is most definitely not, and that is what most of those games are. What most tactical games are.
Honestly, not even like a really traditional game. It's a very, very much dips into like the narrative storytelling style game.
Yeah. All right, so let's do as much of our diligence that we normally do, and then stop, because I will say this. Sarah normally is the one who dives into the mechanics and pulls all that stuff apart, and then I look at the storyteller section and get a feel for how that section differs. This time, I literally cracked open the book, read the acknowledgments, and went, I'm interested. And then proceeded to write 12 pages worth of show notes. and unexcusably look at Sarah and say, I'm sorry.
I'm saying, and where I turned around and said, I'm super busy at work. I do not have time to devote to this week.
Yes, it was definitely eye-opening. Now, this is a John Harper product.
Yeah, and you utterly derailed the moment you saw the name John Harper because you looked up the other things that he's done.
Yeah, because I was like, John Harper, I know this name. I don't know why I know this name, but you know what? Let me do what I normally do. Let's get some history. Let's see what's going on. Oh, he wrote Lady Blackbird. I've played Lady Blackbird.
You have played
I played that with Mad Elf and a little bit, and I remembered how that was designed. Lasers and Feelings, which is something we reviewed.
Yes.
Aegon, which I have looked into, which is a Mythic Age game. But then there's Storm Furies, which I know was on my list of things to look for us.
Okay.
And Chambers, which is their sci-fi one. Storm Furies is like space combat, and Chambers is a sci-fi. Breakers, which is like a Ghostbusters meets D&D, and I've seen that described multiple times that way.
Interesting.
And World of Dungeons, which is definitely one that that people have referenced for different things. So it was a lot of systems that it was like, I've either directly seen and been like, okay, these are intriguing, very quick mechanics designs, but with a lot wrapped behind them. It was published back in 2016. In 2015, it got the Golden Geek, their RPG of the Year. In 2016, it got the Indie RPG Game Award for Best Production and Best Support. I then went to its resources, like, okay, are we talking Morkborg level insanity? Because we see it all the time, right? It's got its site. It's got a free SRD, so you can see the mechanics right there.
Yep.
There's nothing hidden.
Yep.
Forged in the Dark is the wrapping that you have that are themed. So you have like Girls by Moonlight, which I know was brought up in one of our lists.
Girls by Moonlight?
It is the Magical Girls version.
Okay, then.
You know it can be done because we've already talked about the system and what it can handle.
No. I'm with you. I'm not. I'm less flabbergasted about it having a Magical Girls variation and more just having a thirsty moment where Girls by Moonlight just sounds really nice.
It does.
Yeah.
Scum and Villainy, which is the space sci-fi space, and then Band of Blades, which is the dark military fantasy.
Yeah.
Which I could definitely see. There's free supplements. Just tons of wonderful things, sheets, themes, characters, campaign trackers.
Scum and Villainy, there was another one called Hack the Planet also.
Correct.
Which is a cyberpunk one.
Yep. And then John literally has a box for free copies.
Yeah.
Like every once in a while he just throws free copies up there. And if you ask nicely, he might throw another one up there. Like a guy was just like, hey, I bought back during this point and I really want to get a copy, but I'm in the middle of nowhere. And he's just like, message me. I got you.
Yeah, right on.
And it was like, That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because he wants the community to grow, and I can understand why.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a great product. And I use that with a capital P.
Yeah.
Like, everything about this feels amazing. This sits at the same level of, like, I looked at this the same way I kind of looked at what did we decide? X without numbers?
Yeah. XWN.
Yeah,
X
XWN.
without numbers.
It feels very much like that in the way that the author loves the product, the fans love the product, and it builds upon that love.
And the creator just wants to get it out there and just wants people to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Oh, you want to iterate upon it? Cool, here's the SRD.
So I think its own words does it the best justice to describe what it is. And that is, you and your fledgling crew must thrive amidst the threats of rival gangs, powerful noble families, vengeful ghosts, and the blue coats of City Watch, and the siren song of your scoundrels' own vices.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there you go. Like, that is such a beautiful wrapping to say what this really is trying to put out there and what it feels like. It is a cold, foggy, dark city of Duskfall, which is the Dusk Wall or the Dusk. It's an industrial city, kind of 1870s. It's a mashup of kind of like Venice and London and Prague, all of those dark moments. Like any of the vampire movies where you're feeling like you're in huddled streets and there's industry and there's people in heavy coats walking around gas lamps, you know?
We talked about FromSoft games earlier.
Yeah.
Bloodborne was brought up as one of the major influences.
Dishonored is definitely the same thing in there. It's perpetual darkness and haunted by ghosts, which was caused by a cataclysm that shattered the sun and broke the gates of death 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So this city's been around. This world has been around. So you have these vengeful spirits that literally sit just outside the lightning gates that protect the city. And the people within it. And even to the point that there's a specific mechanic, but it's a world mechanic in this, that when someone dies in a crematorium, a bell chimes loud enough that you can tell that it's chiming there, as well as that toll rings out for the dead at their death.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's no question, like if you shoot somebody on the street, even if you use a silencer, as soon as they die, everyone there knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then a raven is dispatched to circle their body tighter and tighter to help the guard, this shadow guard, show up to collect the body and make sure it gets incinerated properly so that the ghost doesn't haunt the city. So, like, everything about that sounds dark and gruesome and horrific, and all of the implications of what it means wrapped around that.
Right,
I mean, you're literally in a haunted Victorian city, trapped by lightning, powered by demon blood.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. One of the things that I really liked is kind of at the end of describing what the core of the setting is, at the very beginning of the book, they make mention that basically, like, what the design philosophy behind all that was.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, basically, we made the outside world completely inhospitable, that you are, so to basically create a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
You are supposed to be trapped in this city where everyone's a scoundrel, and you can't just, like, leave the city and go hang out in the wilderness for, a couple weeks until your heat dies down. You don't have that option. You'll just get eaten by demons.
Yeah.
Or whatever the hell else is out there.
Yeah. It feels like the reverse of Judge Dredd. You're, like, the judges are not the heroes.
Right, right.
They're what is keeping the heroes kind of in check on occasion. But only so much as they don't burn the city to the ground.
Yeah.
Let's
not throw that H word around. We're protagonists. We're not heroes in this game.
It doesn't describe them as heroes anywhere in the book.
No, it's not. It's not a heroic game.
It's
very open about how you are a crime syndicate.
Yeah. And it's described as Peaky Blinders with some weird magical stuff and ghosts.
So I understand from my own research that you can essentially... I have not seen Peaky Blinders.
Okay.
But I feel like I am obliged to at this point. from what I understand, you can put on any episode of Peaky Blinders, literally pick one at random, roll a d10, put on that episode, and you can go, oh, okay, that's the crew, that was this type of role, this is the score, this is the, etc. You can go through all the game mechanics and just be like, oh, I see it all happening.
Yeah.
Any episode of Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, if you've read the books, The Lies of Locke Lamora, you know this world very well.
Okay.
It very much feels like that. We talked about Dishonored and Bloodborne. Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro. Gangs of New York. Ronin or Heat and Thief. And games that were definite inspirations, and you can feel it through every page. Mouse Guard, Apocalypse World, Stars Without Numbers, Fate.
Yeah.
All of them are very prominent inspirations in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just reading that acknowledgement at the beginning of the book helped me immediately start seeing patterns and understanding how it all comes together, because I've experienced all those games. I know the mechanics that kind of make their hearts beat, and I see it so much in this. I see it so much. I'm glad that acknowledgement was there. It helped immensely. And I'm going to say this to our listeners, argue with me, but I will say this. It does heists better than anything we've reviewed. It does Shadowrun better than Shadowrun. It handles factions better than most social systems that I've seen. And it's almost GM-less. Almost. I can't say that it isn't, but it's almost. Now, you had an interesting take on it, which was that it was kind of the Switch Axe game system.
Oh, yeah, so we started playing Monster Hunter World. I should preface this just by saying this, so this doesn't seem completely random. Anybody who's ever played Monster Hunter games will understand this reference, but for those who don't, the Switch Axe, somebody said that, like, you know, the tutorial, the beginner's tutorial for the Switch Axe is like a 14-page PDF document, you know, just to give you the understanding of what the skill ceiling for the Switch Axe is before I say this. But I said this feels like the Switch Axe of games, you know, where it's like super involved to learn. Like, I've seen, like, people say you need to read the rules for this, like, probably 3 or 4 times and watch an actual play to really get the gist of how it's supposed to flow.
I would say definitely if you had none of the precursor games that we discussed or ever played those, 100%. 100%.
But once you do finally get this game kicking on all 8 cylinders, play it the way that it was intended to be played, and you know the rules fluid enough that you can just make the game happen, the amazing stuff you will be able to do with this game system, you know, is just insane. Just absolutely insane, and you will style on every other storyteller out there. Yeah. And I will say that your players will enjoy it at a different level than they've ever enjoyed anything. Because of of how it deploys itself. It is just so different. And we have to get into that, without a doubt. So, first off, this game, much like Powered by the Apocalypse games and a few others, uses playbooks to describe I'll use the term loosely, classes. Yeah. They're classes.
They're tropes, really. They're models of a design. You've got, you know, cutters who are good at fights and violence, hounds, which are good at tracking, leeches, who are good at alchemy and wrecking things, lurkers, who are good at sneaking and breaking into places, slide, who are good at situations in subterfuge, spiders, who are your masterminds of maneuvers, and whisperers, who are your magical people, you know, who handle that kind of stuff and hit it. And that is your trope set of who you're going to be. And there's nothing that says your entire group can't just be bruisers. And there's nothing to say, even in the advancement section, that you can't change your playbook. That you can't just switch from one playbook to another because you realize your character is not that playbook.
Yeah, sure.
Which is even better. You then step into a section regarding heritage about your characters, and the heritage feels almost generic because, and I love that. Like, it's just like, okay, you have your general heritage. You have your Dagger Isles, which are your rootless wanderer people. You have Iruvia?
Probably Iruvia.
Iruvia, which is your foreigners, your Old East, Eastern type of people. You have your Severos,
yep.
which is your wildlands, your survivalists, your harder people. Your
Scovian.
Yes, who are your marginalized, your refugees, often the grunt labor type of people. And
Tycheros.
Yes, the weird mythical people. And it's very tropey. And the package that talks about those are a paragraph each. That's it. That's your heritage. The whole world wrapped around that, right? Now, there are notes later on in the DM section that really goes into a little bit more detail. But again, nothing heavy. A lot of blank space.
Yeah, sure.
Which is wonderful. You assign your background, which gives you a little bit of education. Mm-hmm. And all of that allows you to just sign a dots. Anything for your heritage, you choose. Anything for your background, you choose. And 2 more that fit. So it lets you set the pace. It gives you recommendations. But it literally, if you're like, I'm a survivalist, so I'm going to put a dot in something survival related. But my background is law, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm actually going to be putting my dot in something more sneaky. Because that's really where I was leaning into, was that I was not necessarily the best at my work in the right direction. I was a little more sly, and then wherever else the additional ones go. You have a special ability. There's some default choices, but you can still make selections based upon your play card. You then get to choose a close friend and a rival, and those are very important characters for you.
It feels like that mouse guard.
Exactly.
In,
exactly.
Yeah.
And your vice. You have a vice.
And your vice is actually pretty important for gameplay.
Oh, very much so.
Believe it or not. I mean, we mentioned it earlier that you're trying to struggle against all these things and the siren call of your own vices.
Yeah.
So whether it's faith, whether it's gambling, luxury, pleasure, stupor was one of them. Essentially, just getting drunk or high or whatever.
Sure.
And just not being present for a while.
Yeah.
Or other weird stuff. Arcane indulgences. This is a fantasy setting.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing about it is, this is important because this world sucks.
Yeah.
And you have a stress mechanic that has to be managed. Mm-hmm. And this is a way to manage it.
Sure.
Not everyone's sitting around meditating.
Yep.
And if they are, that's faith, by the way.
Exactly.
Now, if you've played any other RPG with persona or drama kind of mechanics, they're not here. They don't exist here. And the reason for that is because you're playing and discovering that person as you play. You are starting with a very vague sketch, and you're creating your character while you're doing it together, which is different by leagues. People creating pages of character before they come to the table. In this case, no. You're a washed up cop who's part of this crew, who has one friend and an enemy,
and we'll figure the rest out as we go. Yep,
exactly.
It's largely based on the Powered by the Apocalypse system. In a lot of ways, and one of the big philosophies that it carries with it from Powered by the Apocalypse is play to find out.
Yeah.
And you're going to be hearing that a lot, probably through this discussion here, play to find out, and that's, it's right here in character creation. No, we don't need to know much more than the roughest sketch of what set you on this trajectory.
Yep.
The important stuff is in front of you.
Yep.
Let's play to find out.
Yep.
But
the very next step is that tie together, which I love, which is the crew. It already establishes that your group is together, that they have each other's backs, that you guys work as a team to complete a goal. You may not live together, you may not hang out, you may not, but regardless, when the job is going on, you're at the same table. You're Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
And for that very reason, you have some faith and trust in each other to get the job done, because that comes first, whatever that job is. And that definitely rings of Shadowrun for me. The very fabric of creating a team. And yet, that system doesn't have a crew mechanic.
No, it really doesn't. And it should. Of all games, you'd figure it should.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does this have a crew mechanic, but the crew is essentially its own character.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have a crew sheet.
Yeah.
As in like a character sheet for the crew.
Yeah.
Your character sheet or your crew sheet has an archetype. It has its own playbook. Like, are you assassins? Are you bravos, which are basically like mercenaries or thugs, you know? A cult.
Yeah.
You can legit just be like, yeah, we're dedicated to one of the old gods that have been long forgotten, but, you know, we do stuff for them. Are you hawkers, which are vice dealers, essentially? Your drug dealers, your bootleggers, your things like that. Shadows are thieves and spies, doing, you know, burglaries and robberies, sabotage, that sort of thing. Or smugglers, you know, smuggling contraband into and out of this wall of lightning fueled by demon blood that we referred to. That's kind of an important thing, because nothing's supposed to breach that wall.
No.
But sometimes things need to.
Yeah, most definitely. And in that, because it is its own character, it's like your ship or like your Stace, but it's more than that. It grows, it advances, it gives you things.
Yep.
It requires things. So it's one of those investments that everybody's involved in already.
Yep.
The players are already dedicated to it. And there's this concept, the base concept of any crew, which is reputation. Where's your lair? What is your hunting grounds? Does somebody else own that hunting grounds? Like, are you paying someone to be there?
Yeah, sure.
Are you paying them to just ignore you? Or are they angry that you're there?
And both of those are valid options. You know,
Very much so.
You can absolutely just set up shop in somebody else's backyard and then give them the finger when they come barking at your door, you know?
Yeah.
And if that's how you want to run your crew, absolutely. Like, that creates great drama.
Right off the bat.
And it's very much an option. During your crew setup, there's a number of different things you need to determine. Not only, you know, where your lair and your hunting grounds and stuff that is. Your crew will have its own special ability, again, just like your characters do.
What you're good at, yeah.
But then you start kind of making your initial contacts because of where your crew sits in proximity to everybody else. There's no empty space in the city, and it's very explicit about that.
Yeah.
Okay? If your crew exists, they exist in relation to somebody else's territory, whether it's your own or someone else's.
There's no vacuum, yeah.
There is, if you were going to take more territory, it's somebody else's territory. There's nothing that's just up for grabs.
Yep.
And so part of your setting up your crew initially is to essentially get your initial contacts, and that is to have one, essentially an opponent and an ally. And you'll have some what they call coin. Coin is just kind of your general like generic unit of money, so that you're not keeping track of like single gold pieces.
Yeah. It's your wealth. It's a resource counter.
Yeah, it's like let's say about a week's wages is one coin.
Yeah.
And you can even just in your initial setup of your crew, spend some of your starting coin to, I don't know, pay off your rival and make them not hate you as much, or pay off your ally and make them like you more,
or pay off the people who are in your area so they don't ruin your jobs. They look the other way.
And that's just character creation for your crew.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other big thing I liked about the crew thing was that each one comes with kind of a territory map. It's kind of an abstract flow chart. Like, it's not designed to be an actual like physical map of an area, right?
Yep.
Like with northeast, southwest on it. But there's kind of a flow to like different nodes, and there's like 12 or 15. I want to say 15 actually. 15 different nodes in a 3x5 grid.
Yep.
That are all labeled, and your crew kind of your hideout sits right in the middle. And some of them are connected with lines and some of them aren't. And they said you don't have to follow the lines, but if you don't, it's a little extra work. Like there's a little extra penalty that kind of gets on there. But like to expand your crew's influence and territory and stuff like that, which then grows what your crew can do. it's essentially how you level your crew up and make yourself more powerful within the city is by taking extra territory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so those are not only built-in scores, heist scores, jobs,
Yeah.
to take these territories, but also, like I said, nothing is vacant.
Mm-mm.
So every single one of those boxes you want to move into to expand your own crew's influence in the city is somebody else's toes you've got to step on.
And go ahead.
But those people will have enemies.
Yes.
And so if I step on crew A's toes, we're going to make an enemy of them. But somebody hates crew A.
Yep.
And so crew B is going to start to like us more because we screwed them over.
And their allies are going to hate us.
Right.
Yep.
And so just simply by saying we want to take a job to move here, already we have started to send ripples out into what we will describe later as the faction system.
Yeah.
And
which is a whole game within itself.
It's so beautiful how this game treats crews, treats the faction system, and just generates its own story.
Yep.
Every time you wiggle a little bit in this city.
Yep. It is neat. We are going to grace the mechanics, the base mechanics of this game, just to get through it, because there is a lot of detail, and we don't want to muddle ourselves behind it because there's too much here to really discuss.
Yeah, I think if we sat here and discussed the mechanics, we would almost be doing the system a disservice. Because
I agree.
What the system does mechanically is not what makes it unique.
No.
At least on the surface. What it does under the hood is what makes it unique.
So the base system mechanic, the very coarse, lowest grade, it's a D6 system. You have 6 is a full success. If you get 2 6s, you have critical success. A 4 or a 5 on your highest die is a partial success.
Well, you should say it's a dice pool system.
It's a pool system,
Okay,
yes.
so if you have like 3 in a skill, you'll pick up 3 d6.
Yes.
Roll those, and then you take the result of the highest die of what you rolled.
Yes, unless you get 2 6s.
Unless 2 of them are 6s, then that's a crit success.
If the highest is a 4 or 5, it's a partial success. If it's a 1 to 3, it is a bad outcome. If you don't have any dice in your pool, you always grab 2 dice and select the lower of the 2. So you still have a chance.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you could still have a critical success.
You could roll both 6s.
Yeah, so it's always a trait, and you take dice equal to its rating. The one thing that this game wants to make sure you remember is that fiction is first. First, you choose what your character does in the fiction, and then the group picks the mechanic that suits the situation to resolve what happens.
Exactly. This is not a situation where you're going to say, it says on my character sheet I can do this.
Right.
I'm going to use this mechanic. Okay, well, what does that look like? It's the other way around.
Yes.
Just tell a story.
Yeah, don't pick the mechanic and then try and color in the fiction.
Yes.
It will not work.
Yes.
It does not work for this system, which is literally the first confusion you will have from like D&D and stuff. Is that, what are you doing? I'm attacking.
I'm using the attack action.
Yeah.
After moving my 6 inches of movement, as my move action on this turn, and then as a bonus action.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's not.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Your actions are very much direct. Now, it's not I fire a gun. It's not I use my stealth skill. This is command, consort, finesse, hunt, prowl, skirmish, study, survey, sway, tinker, or wreck. And what's interesting about these is these cross over. So even though your command is just to compel swift obedience, it doesn't mean you're not going to use a different trait to do a command action. They are meant to bleed. Because you can. We do this in D&D all the time. Is that a athletics check, or is that just a raw strength check?
Right.
Well, let's go look at the rules. No, stop right there. You've done something wrong.
You just tore a log in half in front of him. I'll let you use strength plus intimidate instead of charisma plus intimidate.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. And that's, your bonus from strength, not from charisma.
Yeah.
Whereas this game is just basically saying, go ahead and roll your strength instead for the command. You literally lifted him off the ground 3 feet. Or, in the case of Darth Vader, use your Arcana. I think that's even a better choice.
Yeah, right.
Because you're literally doing that. And that's the key. The flow of action really is about setting the goal. What do you want to do? What is the fiction you're going to prove? Then, what is the action rating? What are you doing? What are we stepping into? The GM then sets the position. Are you in a position of authority, control kind of a situation?
Yep.
Are you not in a position of authority, or are you totally outnumbered?
Yep.
Like, is it overwhelming around you?
Are you on your back foot?
Yeah. What's the effect level? Is it going to be very effective, or is it not going to be at all, or is it going to be moderately effective?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then, are there any bonus dice? Do you got some abilities? You got friends helping you out? Did you set this situation in motion and therefore got a little bit of a bonus from that? And then you roll. And the dice get judged.
Yep.
Positions are really what make the scene. Whether you're under control, it's risky, or you're doing something desperate. What's neat is after all of that happens, but before the dice rolls, you can adjust it. And that's the beauty.
Mm-hmm.
You could get to the point where you're like, okay, what's your goal? I really want to make this guy, I really want to intimidate the hell out of this guy. Like, I want to make him feel scared to pick up that gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's set the action then on that, all right? There is a gun in the room, so I'm going to say it's risky what you're doing here, because he could just snatch that up. He's closer to it. It's not something that's going to be, okay. Here's the difference, is that I am also a trick. I also have a trick up my sleeve about the space. What do you mean? I've got my hand under the table holding the tablecloth. Oh, so you're going to pull the tablecloth toward you when he goes to reach for the gun. Yeah, so his hand will just slap the table instead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see what you're going to do there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You know, is there anybody else helping you? Yeah, he's going to ask her to count. So she's going to be like a distraction for him as well.
The old Raylan Givens maneuver.
Exactly. But all of that fits. At the very end, you could be like, ooh, I don't like my dice pool. Or I don't like the outcome. The outcome's not going to be good enough. All right. I want to shift this to a desperate outcome. Ooh, what's your intention? I'm not just going to intimidate it. I'm going to lay him out. I'm going to get my hands on that gun and lay him out. It is definitely desperate. Let's reset this a little bit then. Because you're talking about the fiction before it happens.
Yeah, sure.
And all of that is happening in the silent seconds as things are building up. It's very thematic and scene.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get those kind of feelings out of anything else, really. Because you're already in action by the time you're like, oh, crap. This isn't going to go in that direction.
Yeah.
Shit. Right? And that's the thing is that that's where it kind of ties back to a little bit of mouse guard, that failing forward, but at the same time gives you the option to make it cinematic and to bury yourself into it.
Yep.
And I love that. I love that about it. The best part that sits within that thing is that you can make a devil's bargain.
Mm-hmm.
You can still make something happen, but it's going to cost. Like, you can buy a success, basically.
Yep.
And you're going to suffer for it. But at the same time, something's going to happen. What you wanted to have as an outcome is going to happen. But there may be some collateral that goes along with that. Or you might get hurt in the process.
Oh, or somebody else might get hurt
exactly.
in the process. Yep.
Like, there's a lot that can go into that. And all of that is just the base mechanics. And there's so many details in that. There's so many mechanical details that they throw in that feel natural as you read through them. But I can't even get into it because it'd take us another 25 minutes.
It would, really.
The one thing that I will add on to the end of that is that when an event occurs to you, you can resist. And resistance is dependent on a trait like insight, prowess, or resolve based on whether you're doing deception or physical or mental strain. It is always a 6 that you're then pulling back from. So
it's what, 6
plus, stress plus additions, but effectively you're trying to pull it down with your dice. You're trying to get that number down because it's minus the highest dice roll result. But you can actually clear stress off your chart if you get 2. So meaning you take none, and then you also can pull stress off your own character for your actions.
Right.
what this does is this sets the tone of the game. This is where the storyteller and the table can basically decide whether or not resisting something just reduces the overall effects or actually avoids them. And that right there, in black and white, tells you how you can set the tone of your game. Just like you do in Savage Worlds, where you can say, this game is going to be heroes never die. I'm going to let you guys will go to 0. If you all, quote unquote wipe, no one's dying. You are knocked out. Something's going to happen. You're out of the scene, whatever, right? The same thing in this game. You guys want to be able to resist things? Sure. You can resist to avoid. But you can also just set it to resist to reduce the consequences. I mean, there's always going to be a consequence, but you're reducing what they're going to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that takes it from ultra gritty to just gritty, kind of a situation. And I love that that tune and that tone is set right in black and white in the game and explains it vividly. And it's so clearly put. It's wonderful.
Now we mentioned stress.
Yes,
a lot.
Huge
here.
component of this.
Basically stress. Stress is going to be essentially your quote unquote damage track. Okay.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, it actually functions a lot like it does in Fate.
Mm-hmm.
In
the death spiral kind
of thing. In a lot
of
ways, it does.
Yeah.
Because when you take as many stress as you possibly can, when your stress track fills up, you then erase it all and you take trauma instead.
And trauma's permanent. Yeah.
And so you start when there's kind of like lesser traumas, and then there's medium traumas, and then there's like major traumas, and it's what, 3 or 4?
When you take a level 4 trauma, and you're done. But if you take 3 and you go to fill in your 3rd and you cannot, effectively you're making a 4th, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point your character just cannot handle the life anymore and retires.
Yep.
And I really like the mechanic of that because again it keeps things narrative first off. So, your trauma might be something like sucking chest wound, but again, that's narrative. Like nothing is saying like, okay, you're -2 to this or -3 to that. Like it's all kept within the fiction. From that standpoint. But until then, the thing that I really like about stress though is then how that interacts with your vices. Because stress, until it starts becoming trauma, is not a permanent thing.
Nope.
It's your bumps and bruises. It's your emotional stress. It's your you just can't handle it. You saw some things and you need to deal with it. And so you dive into your vices to get rid of this. So what you're going to do basically is you're going to, during your downtime, make a roll based on your vice, and it's going to reduce your stress by a number given the success of that roll. The thing is that it is possible to overindulge in your vices. If you subtract more stress than you have, i.e. you would put yourself into negative stress, you overindulge.
Yeah.
And can have a lot of negative side effects up to and including like your character literally goes on a bender and just disappears for a length of time, and it's like roll up a new character and play them for a game. And then you can come back with your original character after they wash up out of the bar or out of the brothel or, come back from whatever it was going, oh, shoot, is it Wednesday yet? Like,
yeah.
I blinked and it was Tuesday. I'm sorry, guys, you know.
Yep, exactly. And it's that the game explicitly talks to you about, that those kinds of mechanics I wish were core parts of D&D. Could you imagine if there was a narrative catch that after 4 times of going to 0 hit points, you've just taken too much trauma?
Yeah.
Your body or your mind or your soul just can't handle it. And it's time to go, right? Yeah. Like, that would radically change how you played D&D and how quickly you were willing to go to 0.
I mean, it would change... the thing you got to keep in mind too. I mean, yeah, it would radically change how you play D&D, but at that point, like, it would kind of cease to be D&D. Like, D&D is about, you know, heroic power fantasy, and this is not a game about heroic power fantasy. You know,
It isn't. But the games that feel like they're tense within D&D are not.
Yeah.
But this would add tension.
Mm-hmm.
But again, why play D&D?
Yeah.
At that point. I wanted to go on about the world and how there are 60 pages of world stuff stuffed at the end of this book in such a beautiful way. It goes through, 40 factions?
48 different factions.
4 per page.
Yeah.
4 per page.
I think half of those are gangs and half of those are like legitimate like governmental institutions and stuff like that. Yeah.
And they're detailed. They have everything you need, but lots of blank space. And I love every one of them.
Yeah.
They're all well thought out. Great. They're there for your use. Enjoy them.
Just fleshed out enough to give them an identity and a trajectory,
Mm-hmm.
and not enough to tell you who's who, what they're
Why.
up to, why.
What's the direction? That's up to you.
Play to find out.
That's right.
Play
That's
to
right.
find out. Yep.
But everything is there that you need. And there's absolutely nothing to say that you couldn't be a crew working within one of those factions, kind of becoming independent.
Yeah, sure. Your splinter group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a question.
We used to be Red Sashes, but
Yep.
you know, we didn't like the management, so
Yep, exactly.
now we're Blue Sashes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is definitely given there for people who need to step into the creativity of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. Great, let's take one of the existing factions then. We're just going to rub off all of the stuff that's here, except for the fact that here's your contact, here's your rival, here's everything about you guys. This is what you do. I think the other thing was component-wise that I want to bring out is that one of the keys that this game did exceptionally well within the world building was set up that mechanic that you're not going to go on a murder spree. You can't just go around killing every gang member and just being a group of assassins who do that because of the Death Wardens. That mechanic of how they come looking for the dead and how the dead are told make it very challenging. Because although they're not going to get in the way because there's so much going on already, but if you're basically making a giant kill count, they will notice.
Yeah.
They will come to you because they don't want a giant kill count.
They don't want a giant kill count because they don't want a giant group of ghosts that are all angry at being murdered.
Yeah, who can't go into the beyond, which is not even addressed, really.
The gates of the land of the dead have been shattered 1,000 years ago. The last thing these dudes want is more ghosts running around.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And strangely enough, that is where I'm going to stop talking about world building.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I wrote terrifyingly little because there is so much in gameplay that feels so amazing about this. The way that they step through everything, the score, effectively the job, right, has some of the finest mechanics that I've ever experienced when it comes to planning. Being able to remove completely all of the frustrations that come from sitting at a table playing any other role-playing game and waiting an hour and a half while your players argue about what's the best way to handle this.
This is what electrified me about this game. When I realized what this game was doing with how its gameplay flow worked, and the entire thing is set to utterly circumvent the hour and a half planning session. And this is coming off of my game last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Where the group decided they were going to pull a job to smuggle someone across the city when they were being hunted by a rival faction.
Yep.
And we had an hour-long planning session that I, as the storyteller, needed to step into the middle of and go, you guys had an effective plan 15 minutes ago. You're bickering about details that I don't need.
I don't know if you noticed it.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed very quiet. Deliberately hard quiet. I said my piece and I stepped back.
Yep.
And I was just like, I'm just going to let... And the moment that there were questions hitting the table about how things are going, I just was like... Just waited. Because someone else I knew that what my explanation was not enough and someone else was going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And that is the key problem, is that not everyone at the table is hearing the same thing or seeing the same thing.
Well, yeah, everybody's bringing their own experiences to the table during a planning scene, and you've got all of it is essentially done blind because you don't know what the storyteller is or is not going to account for. You don't know what curveballs they might have up their sleeve, etc. And so you don't want to be that one that doesn't, you think, oh, the plan is good enough. And you don't say that you're covering your asses in one way or another, and then the storyteller says, well, you guys never said you did X, so now this is happening.
Quantum ogres don't exist in this design.
Right.
And I love that. You don't need them, because this turns it all on its head. The first thing it asks you is, how are you doing this job? What is the open execution point of this? And it's just, we're making an assault. We're doing a deception, it's a stealth, we're using a cult, we're doing something social, or it's a transport. That's it. What is the base thing?
Yep. And the only detail you need to come up with
is one thing for each of those.
One thing for these is, if you're doing an assault, cool. What's the point of attack?
Right.
Oh, you're doing a deception? What is the method of deception?
Or in our case, even for your game, we did a transport.
You did a transport.
What's the route and means?
We
had that.
Yep.
We figured that part out, and you're like, great, we're ready to go. But no, we're ready to go.
We're ready to go.
Okay.
All the rest of that is details we will figure out as we play. We're going to play to find out.
Right. You then do loadouts, in case there's anything from the crew that needs to go out, or people have specific loadouts they're going to need.
All right, but here's the thing about loadouts.
You're right.
And this is just even more brilliance out of this game system.
Yep.
You don't choose items. You choose a load.
Yes.
As in, what encumbrance do you want to be at?
Yes.
Do you want to be light, which means you can be mistaken for a civilian just going about because you're not carting around a bunch of criminal gear? Do you want to be just, kind of average, where, yeah, if a blue coat looked at you, they'd know that you were a criminal, but you're not penalized by being weighed down by any of your stuff? Or do you want to be encumbered? Are you the one lugging the minigun?
Yeah, are you the assault squad?
Right. And that's it. You don't choose your gear until it becomes relevant in a scene. And the moment I say, all right, I'm drawing my pistol and shooting this dude, I'm sick of his, I've had enough of his lip. Okay, you draw a pistol. I now have a pistol. That's one thing. That's one part of my load.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to consult my map, and, okay, map. That's another part of your load.
Yep. Yep.
Etc.
Right. As it becomes necessary.
Now, the whole reason for this is because we've... And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about flashbacks, which I think we're coming up on very quickly. Very quickly here. Okay. Actually, let's talk about flashbacks first, and then let's finish. I will put the bow on the whole thing.
I'm gonna step through these a little bit.
Yep.
The engagement.
I'm just very excited.
I know. It's okay. The engagement roll is our next step within the phase, and the engagement roll just establishes the let me see how I can put it. It establishes the position of where you sit. So it's when you step into the situation, what is your position? Are you in a good position? Are you in a bad, risky position? Are you in a shitty position?
What went wrong, potentially, when you made your first move and the action started?
And all of that includes advantages and disadvantages from both being bold or vulnerable or having friendly or enemy contacts, other elements. All of that adds into the pool that you roll to make this occur. Then you're stepping into that score, how it's going to actually go. And this is where flashbacks can come in. And that is because as you are making this, you can just be like, so we kick in the door, we make our roll, crap, we're in a shitty position. And it's literally there's 30 guys inside the warehouse with their guns drawn. Okay. So here's what, here's the thing that actually this means. What is that? Last night, I set a charge on the electrical system.
Yep.
So that after we kick in the door and we knew where everybody was, we hit the lights. and in their confusion will have the upper hand.
I'm the group's leech, and
Yeah.
I planted some plastique.
Yep. So now you do a flashback to see how good you were at that. And that's that moment where the guy's like, yeah, click. And nothing happens. Click, click. Dude, this is really bad. You're making us look terrible.
Yeah. Yep.
Freaking thing work. And it's things like that. Even during that, you could just be like, oh crap, Devil's Bargain, it's going off. Okay, what's the problem? It went off It went off one bullet too late. I take a round before it goes off.
I screwed up one of the I carried the 0
Yeah.
in an incorrect place when I was doing the calculations of how much C4 I should be using here.
Exactly. Collateral damage. Not only did I blow up the power box, but I also blew through the wall, and it's going to fill the whole space and make it impossible for us to see.
The blue coats can see the smoke for miles.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
But that's the thing is that your flashback then gives you that. And that right there takes the player tension away.
Yeah.
And adds a level of excitement. You can't undo something. Like, for instance, someone being there. You can't be like, well, we killed him last night. You can't do that. He's there. But the thing is you can set in motion maybe why they're there. Maybe you set them on the path to being there at that time. Right?
For a beneficial reason
Right.
rather than a confrontational reason.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it could definitely give you a bonus in that sense. Like, yeah, that guy's in the room. Why? Because his dealer's there too. What? Okay, so last night I told Jimmy, Two Nails, who's a friend of mine, to see if he could, that this guy was dealing extra stuff, and that if he didn't get down there tonight, he was going to be, low. And so that's why he's there. He's checking over all the goods.
Yep.
So they're both there. And it's like, okay, make the roll. Social contact roll happens. That's why he's there. He's not there for you. He's there because of this. So he's caught off guard now.
So that's all how flashbacks work, and they're
in the score phase.
and they're easy to do. Like,
Yeah.
they might cost you a couple stress if they're, like, really outlandish. But essentially, a flashback is free if it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Reasonable and relatively low-key.
Yeah.
Like, so you're just kind of encouraged to do them. Like, other game systems, like, we discussed, Savage Worlds will do this. If you can do this in a minor way if you toss in a Benny. Adventure Tales of the Aeon Society allows
all
you
the
to
time,
do
yeah.
this with your inspiration points, but that's like a meta currency you have to spend on everything,
Yeah.
And this doesn't really require a meta currency. It's just a game mechanic you can use.
And I can't remember if the play cards actually have some of the quote-unquote free flashback stuff, like this doesn't cost you anything in a flashback.
Oh yeah,
Because it's just something you can do. But anyways, it very much makes sense and is very well detailed on how that is described of what's really kind of free and what is definitely not.
Yeah.
The
bow I wanted to put on top of this, though,
Yeah.
okay, is that all of these mechanics kind of come together to create one key sort of aspect of the gameplay. Okay, now we have talked on the show a lot about, especially like with regards to social encounters. Where if you've got like a martial, like a fighter in your group, in D&D, you don't expect that fighter to actually physically be strong in real life or to know anything about swordplay.
Yeah, that
right?
player is not in that no.
Right, they have an 18 strength score, and they chose the fighter class for a reason, because that's what represents that sort of prowess. So you shouldn't go ahead and expect your social characters to have that same sort of real-life prowess, and actually role-play through their stuff and actually tell effective lies if they're representing a silver-tongued devil at your table. They have a high persuasion skill for that. They have a high charisma skill for that.
Yeah, it's their thing.
It's their thing.
Their expertise.
Let them roll the dice, see what the dice say about it, and then fill in the fiction however you need to after that. Because their character knows how to do it, regardless of what the player does.
Yeah.
Now, what the flashbacks do for you, what the jumping right in with the engagement roll does for you, and foregoing all that planning the effect that creates is the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your characters are trained, practiced criminals.
Yes.
They are good at this.
Yeah.
You are not.
No.
You're a 40-something data entry specialist.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's true.
Like you don't know crap about pulling a heist, but your character, on the other hand, lives in the shadows. They were molded by it. And
you merely adopted it when you bought the book.
Exactly. You merely adopted the dog. And like the flashback allows you to be like, no, my character would have planned for this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course these thugs aren't going to be just able to point guns at us and get the drop on us like this. I'm better than that. Yeah. And this is the point where the thugs that I hired burst through the back door.
Yeah.
Okay. Make a command roll to see if you can get these thugs under your command. Boom. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Great success. I rolled a 6. Awesome. Your band of thugs barges in through the back door and says, I don't think so. I need all of you to drop your guns right now. And suddenly it's a Mexican standoff, and they realize they're in a bad position.
I want to say in Breaking Bad there was a scene where I want to say it was Breaking Bad. I don't remember, but there's this guy who's overlooking like his drug operation, and it's all these tents and everything, and things are working great, and like the mob families all come together, and they're gonna do like the drug transfer, and then in rolls basically the rival gang and guns everyone down. And the guy's just watching this like, oh no, I set up all of this. And then his phone rings and it's his boss basically calling like, how's it going? And he's like, I can't talk right now.
I'll call you back.
Yeah, but basically all it took was like one person basically going, yeah, we're not showing up. We don't have to do this heist. All I have to do is tell one other group who hates their guts and knows what they're about to do. Like, hey, this other rival family is going to be inching in on your territory. Yeah, right, whatever. Don't believe me? Take your boys down to the docks. They're meeting with the Corleones tonight.
Yep.
They're actually going to be transferring the new drugs with your labels on it into your turf, but selling it themselves. We'll be there. Okay. And then you just stand off to the side and watch the fireworks go off.
Yep.
And that's the thing is that this game allows for that in such a clean way.
It not only allows for it, asks for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They want you to play like this.
Yeah.
If they didn't, if it were like you can do it, but at a cost.
No.
It would cost meta currency.
Yeah.
No. They're like, no, it's practically free.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you can do some really outlandish stuff for 2 stress.
Yeah. Which is practically nothing.
Pennies.
Yeah.
Pennies.
We've talked about downtime a little bit and how that's your recoup, basically. As soon as you're done, you immediately go to downtime. Like strangely enough, like mouse guard immediately goes to the player's turn, you immediately go to downtime.
Yep.
And this is where you're getting your payoff, your heat, your entanglements, all of the fallout from the score, good and bad. You can do flashbacks here as well at a cost of a coin or a rep.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to handle things from the fallout. Whether the job was successful but with a lot of heat or other problems that were tied to it, you can do things to mitigate that as well. So flashbacks don't just end. Like you can work through it. Like, hey, we had a lot of heat at the end of this. All right, I'm going to work off some of that heat with a flashback. What do you mean? On our way out, one of the bags, I literally just heave off the building right into the cops' cart. So it lands at their feet. And those cops just don't go through that door into the building. They go across the street instead. And the bag may or may not have stayed there, Okay, that's easy. So you're taking a little bit of resource hit, but you're going to do it. All right, that's fine.
One of the things that I love too is that heat's a mechanic, and it works a lot like it does kind of in Grand Theft Auto, where you've got basically a wanted rating.
Yeah.
The amount of interest the blue coats have taken in in your crew, and one of the things you can do to get rid of heat is essentially have one of your characters turn themselves in and go to jail for a time.
Yeah.
And that will bleed off, I think, all of your heat, actually.
I believe it does.
I think it bleeds off all your heat. One of the other interesting things, though, that kind of goes along with that is that jail is a valid play space.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, like, if your whole crew goes to jail, or even if some of them goes there, like, we talked about those, like, influence maps.
Mm-hmm.
Jail has its own influence map.
Yeah.
And depending on what influence you have in jail, you can do things like paying off guards, getting information from other prisoners, and like using that. The spider class, the spider playbook, actually has has a special ability called Jailbird that they can get, which actually makes them like more effective when they're incarcerated. And you get I forget exactly what the bonus is, but basically, like, yeah, if you're in jail, you get X, Y, or Z bonus, just because, yeah, sure, of course you're in jail,
The information's tighter.
Yeah, exactly. It's a controlled situation there.
Yeah. The game does have a concept for progress clocks, kind of like Doom clocks, and it recommends you use them on a regular basis.
Yeah, for pretty much everything.
Yeah, like in all it's very simple design. It's like, here's a circle. Put as many spokes in as you need to make sections of your time clock so that you can keep track of events. Is it a complex time clock? Maybe it has, it has 4 pies or 6 pi, 8 pies within it, right? Or is it a simple one where there's literally like 2 events? This happens and then this happens. And you basically fill those in as time ticks by. Because you use that clock because people may spend time.
Mm-hmm.
They may use the thing of saying, like, okay, I am going to spend one of the ticks on the clock and accept some stress to let this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Time tick, this event ticks by. And again, it is not a direct correlation to time. It is an event tick, just like Doom clocks are.
Yeah.
So it recommends you do this so the players can use that as a currency and also feel it. And it should be obvious to them that events are ticking by.
Mm-hmm.
So that the story continues. This is, again, that meta line where we talk about it being very gray when it's at the table. And this, it is exceptionally gray. It is very obvious what's going on to everyone at the table in the obvious sense.
Mm-hmm.
In a scene, you may not know that this is what's happening with this other family on this other side, but very soon after, everyone knows that. It becomes public knowledge, kind of a thing. The one other thing that it brings up is PC versus PC. This is not a player versus player system. Conflicts will always happen, but the idea is that you will immediately collaborate, make judgment calls, and move on. The idea being that it isn't saying that you can't have disagreements between characters, but in the end, they are a crew who are trying to get a common job done, and they will figure that out and move on. And the moment a disagreement comes up, it literally tells you, pause the damn game.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what layer you're dealing with. Is this characters? Are these players? Work through it. You both agree to it, you move on.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Don't make this, don't have this drag on forever. The point is that this game is about risks and consequences. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So don't dwell on, are we doing this perfectly? You're not. The chances are you're going to have a consequence. The chances are those consequences are probably going to be bad most of the time. But that's what makes up the game. That's what gives you this theme of that everything is going to have a cost associated with it. And that's why you have all these resources. Stress, coin, contacts. These are all there to mitigate some of those consequences. But in the end, you're going to have to make hard decisions. And that's where the game becomes. That's where it sits. It's within those hard decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Not crafty things created by the storyteller, but players making dice, deciding things, bargaining, figuring out at the last minute, and then going, crap, this isn't going to work. How are we going to do this? And gritting their teeth and making some kind of a decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's the meat and potatoes that are given to you, and it's amazing. It is truly amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There is some advancement.
Mm-hmm.
It's honestly not much to talk about.
Yeah, it's a lot like other Powered by the Apocalypse things.
I will flat out say it's what you would expect from this game. It's very, very flat, but easily done. And I almost say it sits closer to Mouse Guard than it does Powered by the Apocalypse. Because it says, did you lean into your vices? Did you lean into your heritage? Did you do these things? There's your XP. Go spend it.
Yep.
Have a nice day.
And very much like in Powered by the Apocalypse, it's more like fill in some boxes and or dots on your character sheet.
Yeah. And then, did you advance?
Mm-hmm.
Go grab something nice from the stash.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally. Have a new special ability. Enjoy yourself.
Yep.
You know?
Don't spend it all in one place.
Then there is the storyteller section. Not the DM section. The storyteller section that literally has the term best practices in it.
Player best practices in it.
I was weeping. This is another game that needs to have this shit stitched in needlepoint on the wall. If this just was the first thing on the front of r/RPG, are you a player? Look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask any questions. Just look at this. And this will tell you how to play this game. Stop thinking. Stop overthinking. Just embrace the scoundrel's life. Go into danger and fall in love with trouble. Don't be a weasel. Choose an action that matches your character, not your dice pool. Dear God. Take responsibility. Use your stress. Don't talk yourself out of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Build your character through play. Act now, plan later. Flashbacks are a thing.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
At dawn, we plan.
That's right. Then there is the DM side of this. What is the DM's goals of this game? And this is beautiful. Like, any game that can hand you a set and basically say, this is your goal. This is it. It's this simple.
Mm-hmm.
Play it to find out what happens. Convey a fictional world honestly and bring the world to life. Ask questions. Ask establishing questions. Ask provocative questions. Ask leading questions. Ask trivial questions, because we do that all the time for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Ask the players for help.
Mm-hmm.
Be there. Provide opportunities and follow their lead. Where do those go? We say this all the time. Your players will lead you to the quests.
Yeah.
And life.
Your players will tell you how they want to have fun.
They will give you the target, the locations, the situations, what they're planning on doing. Stop planning for them.
Yeah.
Telegraph the action before it hits. This is neat. The idea that you're not telling them that the enemy pulled out a gun and shot them. You're saying, as you enter the room, your eyes meet, and he's starting, his hand is in those seconds slowing down, sweeping his coat open to reveal the revolver at his hip. His hand is gripping it and the hammer is cocking back. Okay, that's where we are.
Yep.
We are in a very dangerous situation.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
That, you are telegraphing what is going to happen next. You know the next thing is that gun being pulled. You won't, as a storyteller, change that optic. Because he doesn't get a counter roll. At no point in our mechanical discussions did we talk about the NPCs rolling against this.
Yeah, they don't.
You just resolved the scene with the roll.
NPCs never touch dice in this game system.
Nope.
It's always the players.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's getting shot, it's not because the NPC is rolling to hit. It's the PC rolling to, see how that happens.
Yeah.
On their side, whether it's a dodge or it's whether they're going to try to soak it or, whatever game mechanic comes up for that.
Yep. But the basic principles of the storyteller are even in here. Be a fan of your PCs. Let everything flow from that fiction. Paint the world with haunted brush. Surround them with unusual sprawl, or industrial sprawl. Address the characters. Address the players differently. Consider all the risks, and hold on to your game lightly. And I think that last one is really how, if you can grab that properly, if you can look at the game and hold on lightly, I think you can understand where this game is going, and that you can feel that it's GM-less. That you're riding the coattails of the story and just pouring flavor out.
For me, like the GM in this situation is mostly there as essentially a referee and a provocateur, rather than as a storyteller. Like, yeah, sure, you're still going to be narrating everything, to bring the story and the world to life for your players. But that traditional sense of, like, I'm going to write an epic plot with epic NPCs, etc., it doesn't feel like it fits nearly as much here, because I feel like all the writing of the quote-unquote epic plot is being done by the players, by their actions, by their motivations.
And that's the difference in this. That's where they talk about potential fiction versus established fiction. You're not establishing the fiction here. There's no hard moves. There is just what is potential. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that, the scene creates an establishment that you follow through. A goal that must be achieved on the other side. Did they achieve their goal? What was the consequences? Because the players are there. Things happen.
Yep. All right, you wanna do closing thoughts?
Yeah.
Is there anything more you want to discuss about?
No, I think everything else fits.
Yeah.
Within some other questions and stuff, but I will let you lead. What do you think Blades in the Dark do well? And you can skip over all of my paragraphs of craziness unless they already fit.
That's good, because I didn't write any of my own on this one.
I noticed.
I was far too busy with today, so but no, seriously, off the top of my head, Blades in the Dark sets out to be a very specific thing. It does not try to fall into a lot of those pit traps that, like, a lot of the other role-playing systems do, We discussed this earlier in our own private conversation that, like, you can feel a lot of older games still tried to mimic that old role-playing formula. You know, you have to have physical stats. You have to have mental stats. You have to have a group of skills. You have to have an established combat system with an initiative order and some form of hit points where you can have damage. You have to have armor and. We discussed Vampire the Masquerade being a great example of this. How it's set out to be a game of personal horror. And a very social, very political game.
Discussing humanity.
But handed you the same tools that Dungeons & Dragons hands you with them, with just different dice to represent them.
Yeah.
And then people wondered why those games devolved into just combat twinking, you know? Because of course they're going to. They handed you the same tool set D&D hands you. Of course you're going to solve all your problems with violence when you can move faster than sound and, throw cars at people.
And there's no consequences truly to diablerie.
Right.
Nothing that can't be mitigated.
Right. Oh, but your humanity stat, who cares? It barely has any mechanical difference, impact on me whatsoever. And I think we're seeing a big move away from that in role-playing games, where games are starting to realize that they don't have to follow a formula and hand you the same menu, the same bill of goods that every other popular role-playing game before them has done. You can tailor your experience to tell a type of story that you're trying to tell. And this doesn't go for generic systems like Suede, because Suede, Savage Worlds is meant to be generic. It's meant to be able to represent a wide number of things. Blades in the Dark sets out to tell crime stories about criminal crews in a dark Victorian fantasy setting. Very specific, but it hones every single one of its mechanics like a blade to precisely render that experience for you. No more and no less.
Yeah. No, I think that's accurate.
And that is the greatest compliment I think I can play. I can give this game.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. I will say that first off, the game book itself is exceptionally well designed. I love it in all its forms, despite some of the detractions that I will say that it is a lot of wall of text when staring at it.
That was my major disagreement with it. Yeah.
I will still say that it does it exceptionally well. Because at every turn, I knew within a page or two was going to be a summary done in a graphic or something graphical, and an example that is clear.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes a simplistic outline of what I just read again. So the reinforcements are quick, easy, and accessible.
Yeah.
And the whole there's whole playthrough sections that go through various things that are all by themselves. They're not chopped up within the sections within the book. There are small blurbs that give you like a paragraph of what this would look like in play.
Yeah,
but in the back of the book,
really good.
100% great.
Mm-hmm.
They're not super artsy, but they're artsy enough to give you the feeling, but also explain exactly what's going on at the table.
Yeah, yeah.
It is incredible how close the inspirations had connections, and those inspirational connections and the acknowledgments helped me understand the points that were trying to be made and the pulls that were coming from these other systems. There are so many things I want to steal. I just want to thief everything. I want to steal the devil's bargains. I want to steal the factions. I want to steal the flashbacks, the stress system. I want to throw it in other places and just go crazy. I love it all.
You don't have to steal it if you're playing the system.
I'm with you, and I get that.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm
just saying. I think the other thing that this game has a issue with is scope creep. And what I mean by that is that you can very quickly fall back into epic campaign mind.
Yeah, I agree.
When you're not at the table with your players, you can lose yourself in the campaign design and forget what game you're playing.
Yeah.
Because there's so many components. You're practically playing a game by yourself. We've seen this in other systems. XWN has that within its own faction. There's a whole faction system, or world system or whatever. Where it's its own game.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even need a player. You can just run it.
Mm-hmm.
This faction system feels that way, and I could see storytellers getting lost in creating it or doing something different than what the book has.
Did you ever watch Daredevil on Netflix?
I watched a little bit of it.
So the story, especially the very first ones, the whole saga between Daredevil and Kingpin, and even I think the later seasons when Punisher comes in and stuff like that, you realize as epic as that struggle and that whole season was and stuff that took place on 4 city blocks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, that was okay, you know what? Keep in mind, we're doing Daredevil, not Avengers.
Right.
There is a lot of story you can tell in 4 city blocks.
100% agree.
Yep.
Yep. No, I agree. I completely agree. And that's that whole scope design that we talk about. Just stop looking away from what the players can see.
Yep. Exactly.
All right.
Your players are a bunch of ragtag dudes living in a burnt out, building on the far end of a forgotten street in the warehouse district.
Yeah.
Think Fight Club, Paper Street Soap Company.
Much. Yeah.
Okay, Paper Street Soap Company is the classic crew hideout.
Yep.
And you watch that crew grow from 2 people. Is it 2 people?
Is it
2
people? Technically.
Yeah.
Is it 3 people?
Does Marla count?
Yeah. Marla never counted.
To, that whole Project Mayhem.
Yeah.
You watch that whole thing blow up, and they still live in this burnt out thing on an industrial road,
Yep.
It's
true. It's true.
Yeah. For me, I think the thing that I think there was 2 things that I don't think Blades in the Dark did terribly well, or I should say put me a little bit off about it.
Okay.
They were barriers for me to get through. Not things that they didn't do well, but they were barriers for me to get through, to
hurdles,
grasp the system. Yeah.
Road bumps.
One hurdle of the system is that, like you said, it's very wall of texty.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of words to describe some very basic mechanics.
Okay.
For instance, task resolution.
Yes.
Just how to resolve a task.
Yeah.
Is 5 pages long.
Yes.
And that is very intimidating. if you don't see through, if you don't read between the lines and understand that they are going over every last possible strata and explaining the reason behind every single rule of why you would need to do this or this or this, it looks like, if you just skimmed it, you look at it and you go, this is 5 pages of task resolution. This looks like too much.
Yeah, and then you realize that there's 20 pages of task resolution that does not complete the D&D task resolution.
Yeah, well,
outline.
But the other thing that it doesn't do well, and I'm gonna take a page right out of Z Bashaw, the YouTuber who does the animated spell books.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen him, look him up.
Go look him up.
He made a video where he touched on Blades in the Dark, and one of his big criticisms is there are so many buzzwords in this game.
Oh my god, yes.
It reminded me so much of reading the One Ring RPG.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Everything has this will cost you a point of valor unless you use honor, in which point you will get inspiration, but only if you use heroics.
And there are consequences.
And there are consequences which will cause darkness points, which will then lead up to vice. But vice can only match your virtue. And it's like, how many buzzwords are we going to use here for, just how many point systems playing against each other? Now, Blades in the Dark doesn't do the different, interacting, things like that, but, every member of your crew has its own little buzzword name,
Yeah.
Every type of crew has a buzzword name. You don't have cops, you have blue coats. I mean, that was an easy one, but, again, they changed the name of something that is commonplace and made it something else.
I mean, Shadowrun does that.
Sure.
There's a lot of systems that do that. And even, Powered by the Apocalypse is notorious within their player cards of changing the terminology used for your approach.
I'm not saying this is the only game to ever do it.
No, but
I'm saying having to learn an entire lexicon full of lingo to just make it through the game is its own barrier for entry.
I agree.
That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Yep, that's true. That is true.
It might not even be the worst game at it, but it is a barrier of entry.
It is one of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's my critique. Honestly, I love this game. I read through it. I have even in this podcast subtly nudged Rob to run it so that I could play in it.
Yes.
I had a whole character concept cooked up halfway through the first 15 pages.
Yep.
And I would be so excited if I got to play this game.
All right, so let's hit some questions.
Alrighty.
So Nevim asks, what makes Blades in the Dark so compelling? In one sentence, what is it?
I've literally never seen another game like this.
Okay.
I've literally never seen another game like this that does this style of storytelling and does it so well.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same, it's so finely honed to do the one very exclusive thing that it sets out to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, so much of it is portable to other systems.
So much of this just feels natural to me that I feel like I would say the most compelling thing for me is that anyone at the table that I run on any of my games could play this.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Easily.
Anyone.
Easily.
What's the differences between Blades in the Dark and Forged in the Dark? Trappings. I'll use the term trappings.
Forged in the Dark is the SRD, the System Resource Document, and that is the essentially genericized. It doesn't take place in the steampunk Victorian thing. It doesn't take place anywhere. It's just the rule system.
Yeah.
And is meant to be ported to whatever your property is.
Yep. Does the game have supplements and expansions? Heck yeah, go find them. They're on the site and all over Reddit.
Yep.
Enjoy yourself.
Yep.
Go to Drive-Thru RPG.
People love this. People love hacking it, and the creator loves people hacking it. So, by all means, there's lots out there.
What is missing and what can be improved? I can't talk about what could be improved, other than to say that, and I say this about most people who create games like this. Is books need to be accessible.
Yeah.
I think there's some improvement that could be done there. I can't even go into details as to what I would directly change, but I would say there's some accessibility. There's a little bit of accessibility there that could be improved, and that is like a 2%. Like, hey, this is something that could be done. What's missing? I don't know. I really don't. I think I'd have to play it for a while to really get a feel for what I feel is missing, because there's literally nothing glaring at me that says it's missing.
Having not played a game of it, having only read
Yeah.
the rule book, it's very difficult for me to say that any aspect of this is lacking.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a complete picture to me, but who knows?
Yeah. All right, what else we got?
So Benjico asks, how easy would it be to incorporate the flashback mechanic into other systems? Extraordinarily easy.
Mm-hmm. The problem is cost. Is that in this game, stress is one of your resources. And without having some kind of cost in that other system that you're in to be able to accommodate for this, it could feel trivial. But the cost is very low. It's a low bar of entry based upon what the circumstances you're in. So I think like Savage Worlds, a Benny would definitely be an easy cost if there was a cost at all. You know, depending on what you were doing.
I'd say a Benny's good. I mean, I think the problem we have in my game is that Bennies don't flow nearly enough. I don't think you guys have enough opportunities to use your Bennies.
I think this would be great.
And so, giving you more instances to use Bennies would give me more incentive to give out more Bennies and keep the economy flowing.
Yeah. But I think if putting it into something like D&D might just help the narrative flow faster, which I think is great. Like, don't even make a cost bar on it. Just make a decision on whether or not they're rolling with advantage or disadvantage. That's it.
Yeah.
If it's something simple, just make them roll. If it's something that's that's now risky for them to do, or something that would have had have a questionable outcome, make them roll with disadvantage. Done.
Sure.
That's it. You're done. There's your cost.
I think the bigger question would be not would it be easy enough to incorporate, because it's super easy to incorporate.
Yeah. All
you're literally doing is saying, what if I had already handled this problem?
Right.
Okay, make a roll. That you can do that in any game system. But I think the question is narratively, how would it impact the feel of the game? Flashbacks fit in this game because they represent the idea that your characters are already planning scores.
You're in the area. You're making the plans. Now you're just executing them.
Yeah, like, of course you planned this.
Right.
We want to stop you from having to actually physically plan it as players.
Right.
We want to assume your characters have already done that, so flashbacks allow us to just say, yeah, of course you had a contingency for this. Of course you thought ahead to this event. Of course there would be a locked door and you would pickpocket the key for it. Why wouldn't you? You're a trained criminal. I don't know that you have that luxury in other games, though. You know, but again, entirely depends on what type of story you're running here. The conceit that's going to come with that is that you are a professional in your field and you would have accounted for this contingency. That's the thing. So if you are doing like a survival, gritty-based Dungeons & Dragons, hex crawl, OSR style game, I don't think flashbacks fit with that, because they take out a large part of what I think OSR is all about, and that is doing the planning and, the game hating you and wanting you to suffer.
Yeah, or executing unprepared.
Yeah, exactly. And you suffering if you do go in on, execute unprepared. But if you are playing a lighter, more heroic game where success is assumed and you're just there to tell a fun narrative with your friends, and like my home game, you're playing with the heroes never die special rule because living heroes tell more interesting stories.
Yeah.
I'm not there to kill my players. I'm not there to make it a hard experience. I'm there to make it a fun experience.
Right.
Yeah, then flashbacks could fit.
Especially if you're in a small area. Like if you're in a defined area that the events are going on. Like Kids on Bikes, it would be a great example where you could easily throw this in.
Yeah, sure.
Without a problem.
Absolutely.
You could argue to a degree that it wouldn't work for something like Mouse Guard, because it doesn't need it. It's not you're going through an adventure.
The flow of the game is different.
Yeah.
And there's more of a collaboration of how that story unfolds. I don't think you need a flashback because time isn't that big of an issue.
Right.
Narrative sequence isn't that big of an issue.
No.
You can just, like, in the middle of something be like, oh, hey, what if this happened while that was unfolding? Like,
boom, done.
Okay, cool, done.
Yeah, it happened. Yeah, all of that. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums that up.
All right. So 22 Bebo asks, system agnostic question here that I'm sure you've talked about before. I have a player who is having trouble finding their character's motivation.
Hmm.
We've talked about it outside of character a bit, but haven't really found a solution yet. To make matters worse, they are playing into the lone wolf archetype a bit, where their character is pretty standoffish even with other PCs. For example, the character often goes to get a drink alone at the bar instead of talking to the PCs in downtime scenarios. Any suggestions on what I can do to help them find motivation?
All right, so here's the two things I'm going to say. First off, I'm going to get the elephant out of the room and say, if you're playing a lone wolf character in a team-based game, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, if you're playing a lone wolf character in a team-based game, it is your obligation as a player at the table to meta. Everyone at the table needs to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're sitting in the corner waiting for someone to ask you about your dead wife that you don't talk about, but you have a locket that you look at constantly, then they need to know about the damn locket. Right? Mm-hmm. So that they can open that door. If that's the gateway to getting to know your character, it has to be not just obvious in the way you describe things, but it has to be 100% part of the story. The storyteller needs to be aware, and the players around you need to be aware.
Yeah, agreed.
Because they may not give two squats. They may just think you're a crappy player at the table.
Yep.
So those are the two pieces that I'm going to say right off the bat. I honestly hate the concept of a lone wolf in a team-based game. If you're doing an OSR Morkborg game where you're the silent fighter who's just running along with everybody else and sits in the corner and sharpens their blade, that's not a problem. That's not a problem, because it's Morkborg.
Mm-hmm.
Build another character when that one dies. Move on.
And they will.
And they will. Mm-hmm. But if this is D&D, team-based, adventure-based, everybody working together for a common goal, great. You can have conflicts. You can have differences of opinions. You can even have silence at times. But all of that revolves around the players knowing the meta.
Yeah. I think my input on this is that I think this is an out-of-character problem, and I don't think solving it in-character is the solution. You do mention that you've talked them out of character a bit, but haven't really found a resolution. I would just outright ask them, like...
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm just going to hold my thought here for a second.
Okay. So, outright ask them, like, why is this character in the group? If they can't come up with a sufficient answer for that, then they shouldn't be in the group, you know? Yep. They have to have some common ground to stay with a group of adventurers and continue to watch each other's backs in intense situations, you know, to work together as a team for a common goal. Like there has to be something there binding them together.
Yep.
You don't just literally follow three strangers around that you don't like and aren't interested in and continue to do that day in, day out. Okay? To give you kind of a personal example, I played a lone wolf character in a previous game. Now, for better or for worse, maybe I was the asshole. I don't know. I'm not interested in the answer to that right now. But it was brought up to the storyteller that my character was offstandish and they didn't like me playing the lone wolf character. But the key thing is that I had everyone's back. Anytime it ever mattered, I was never self-interested. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing, is I was just quiet and brooding and angry. But I was a team player about it. And when we did finally, but the storyteller confronted me out of character and said, "Hey, what's going on with your character? Because everybody else thinks they're a jerk." I said, "Well, I've got this dark backstory, and no one's asked me about it." And he went, "And no one's going to, because they all are afraid of your character."
Right.
So I went out of my way to do a scene that revealed why my character was offstandish and angry and, you know, all that jazz. And then suddenly people were like, "Oh, wow, we never realized you fought your way out of the slave mines. Are those all whip scars on your back?" And I went, "Yes. Yes, they are. And now you understand why every single one of the bad guys has to die. And they went, oh, we get it. Is there anything we can do? And we're like, yes, continue to have my back like I've had yours, and we're all going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, everybody was like, oh, wow, what a team player.
Right.
We love this character. And suddenly, my angry broodingness was just like, no, we get it. We get it. This person has had a rough life, and we've got their back.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Maybe there just needs to be a scene like that. But the point is, though, is that character, even if the player doesn't know what the character's motivation is, they're not going to be able to get that scene. They have to be able to articulate why they're part of the group, why they're adventuring with these people, what their own personal drive is, and how that ties to the rest of the group. And, I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think the obvious answer is, if they can't articulate a good reason why their character is part of this group, they shouldn't be. They should roll a new character that has a reason to be with the group.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah. One thing that came into my mind that might help as a whole. For this particular person, this particular player and their character, one of the things that Mouseguard does exceptionally well, if they're having a hard time finding their motivation, one of the things that Mouseguard does exceptionally well is set you up every time on your character sheet with a belief, a goal, and an instinct. The belief is something your character holds. It is an actionable belief of who they are. Their goal is something they set every time they go on an adventure. What is their goal for the adventure? And the instinct is what they do without a thought. And those three things, if you just tell your player, I want you to have a card, before you even come to game, I want to know what your character's belief is.
Yeah.
Put that down, whatever it is.
Yep.
You could change it at between games if necessary, if you feel that it doesn't quite fit. But that needs to be the thing you stare at.
What is the thing that drives them? What is the goal they're trying to accomplish? What is
the goal is when they sit down at the table and you're in your adventure, write down what your character believes their goal is for that adventure.
Well, that's more of a short-term thing. I'm saying but belief is more of like a long-term life philosophy that gets you out of bed every day.
Correct. Yeah, but when they come to the game, have them write their goal down. What is your goal for this adventure? Your character's goal, not the group goal, your character's goal. Maybe it reflects part of the group's goal. Like, when we finish this guy off, I'm taking his sword.
Sure.
Great.
Absolutely.
That's a goal. And then, what is your instinct is something that you react to almost everything with. Are you the first person to move when a fight breaks out? Are you the first one to take cover? You know? Are you what is your instinct?
Never move in haste.
Exactly.
Yep, that's mine.
First mouse forward.
First mouse forward is yours.
Is mine.
Yep.
And all of that helps that player stare at their motivations.
And every single time they have a question of what would my character do in this situation, they can look at those things.
Yep,
okay?
Exactly.
Okay, a tense situation happens for Oak, your guard mouse.
Yep.
You look at your character sheet and it says first mouse forward. Okay, I guess I'm drawing my sword and taking a step forward at that weasel.
Yep. Or I'm throwing my shield between that thing and my people.
Exactly. My character is never act in haste. Always have a plan.
Right.
So while you're drawing your sword and moving forward, you're buying me time to go, okay, what assets do we have? What liabilities do we have? How do we want this to turn out? What is the plan and who can I command to do what?
But those three simple things, the belief, the goal, and the instinct, will help that individual player. I'm not saying you shouldn't have all your players at your table doing this. Some of them could do this pretty fast if they know their characters well.
Sure.
I think the second piece, which I think is almost more important for a lone wolf, when the word lone wolf hits the table, the first thing you should do is look at that player and say, if you want to be a lone wolf character, you need to give me three things. Number one, you must have a bond with another character at this table. And that bond must be as strong, if not stronger, than best friendship. I don't care if you don't talk to them, but you have their back as a fighter to fighter. You will stand shoulder to shoulder.
Silent protector
Exactly.
that watches from afar, but you will guard them.
Right.
Yeah.
You will have somebody at the table that you know a secret about. The truth that you will never, ever give up. And the last one is there's somebody at the table that you need to fix. Something that maybe they don't even know about. Maybe you wronged them in a previous life and they were unaware. Maybe it's $5 you owe him, but he just won't pay. He just won't take it. Those 3 things right there will bond them to the table, and every game session you can lean into those with that player.
Sure.
Boom, done. Now your lone wolf can be a lone wolf, but they are 100% engaged with that group.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Yeah.
So that's my gift to you is 2 different systems, because that bond system comes from Dungeon World.
Yep.
And the belief, goal, and instinct comes from Mouse Guard. Beautiful. These are kit bashing to make things work.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with doing that. I highly recommend it. There's your answer, 22 Bebo.
All right. Well, all right. So next week's topic, we're going to be talking a little bit about progression systems in games, horizontal progression versus vertical progression, and what that kind of does to power curves within games, what that does to advancement systems and whatnot.
And how does it make it easier? Does it make it harder? Is it obvious?
Yeah.
Like, this game has a very low curve to it. How does that really affect it?
And what does that even mean, Yeah,
because a lot of times you're not thinking about advancement when you look at a system. And other times, much like D&D, the advancement system is so blatantly in front of the character that that's all they can think about.
Here is the fighter. Here is how it advances.
Like, before you get into the fighter, they show you the chart of advancement. They're trying to tell you how they want that game to go.
Yep.
But we'll get into all of that.
All right. You can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. Shoot us some questions, and join the other storytellers up there that love to discuss different games, different systems, and different storytelling conundrums. You can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who support us every single month and continue to do so. It helps us out every time, especially our name members: Knox in the Box, Sam, Subjet, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion, Veteran, Sean, and Hulavu. We truly appreciate all your support. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at painterhead.com/Arcane Anthems. Our intro music was Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find them at freemusicarchive.org.
And a big shout out, as always, to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us, and being patient with us when we go long on nights like tonight.
Indeed.
All of our friends who sat at our tables, who gave you these great stories to share with you over the years, and you, every single one of our listeners. We love you guys so much.
Love you.
Good night.
Good night.